Hello students, in this video we are going to learn the second part of the lesson, reproductive morphology. In the first part we have learned about the different types of inflorescence, parts of the flower like petals, sepals and androecium. Now we are going to learn about gynecium. Gynecium, otherwise called pistil of the flower, is the female reproductive part of the flower, and it consists of three important parts, namely the expanded part of the gynecium, which is at the basal region, is called ovary, and an elongated structure which is called a style, and that ends in an apical structure that receives the pollen, which is called a stigma. The ovary with the stipe, this is what is called a stipe. The ovary with the stipe is called as stipitate ovary. What are carpels? Carpels are the components of gynecium. Gynecium is made up of one or more carpels, and carpels may be united or distinct. If they are united or connate, they are called as syncarpous. If they are distinct and free, it is called as apocarpous. According to the number of carpels, they are classified into unicarpellary ovary or monocarpellary ovary. Example, Fabaceae family. Bicarpellary ovary, which is having two carpels. Example, Rubiaceae. Tricarpellary ovary, which is having three carpels. Example, Cucurbitaceae. Tetracarpellary ovary, which is having the four carpels. Example, Lamiaceae. And multicarpellary, more than four carpels, we call it as multicarpellary, which is present in Nymphaceae. Now, according to the fusion, we have already seen if the carpels are fused, we call it as syncarpous. If they are free and distinct, we call it as apocarpous gynecium. If they are united and fused, connate, then we call it as syncarpous ovary. So, apocarpous gynecium is considered as the ancestors of angiosperm. So, angiosperms, first we will have the apocarpous, then that will be followed by syncarpous ovary. In fusion of carpels, when the pistil contains free carpels, distinct carpels like this, we call it as apocarpous ovary. Example for this is annona. So annona is nothing but the custard apple. The next one, we can see the three carpels, but they are united in one locule. This is called as syncarpous unilocular, single locule. In the next one, we can see there are four carpels and they are divided by the septum, which are the cross walls inside the ovary, and they form four locules. So this is what is the syncarpous tetralocular ovary. Next we shall see the classification of ovary based on the number of locules. The ovary bears the ovules on a specialized tissue called as placenta. So this is the placenta. The placenta bears the ovules. The dark brown color structures are called as ovules, and they are borne on the specialized tissue called placenta. And the septum is the cross wall that will divide the cavity of the ovary into partitions, and these cross walls or the partitions of the ovary is called as septum. The wall of the ovary and these septa will form the cavity, which is called as locule. So this is having three locules, 1, 2 and 3 locule. So here there are only two locules are there because the placenta divides the ovary into two partitions. This is bilocular, example Crossandra. This is trilocular, example banana. So according to the number of locules, the ovary may possess more than one locule, bilocular, trilocular, tetralocular, pentalocular, etc. They are having more than one locule, then it is called as plurilocular. The condensed shoot for the purpose of reproduction is called flower, and the flower has lot of extension in the condensed internodes of the receptacle. And what are these extension called as? First one is called Anthophor, when the internodal elongation seen between the calyx and the corolla. So this is the corolla and this is the calyx. When there is an extension in the internode of this, we call it as Anthophor. Example, Caryophyllaceae. The second one is called Androgynophore, when the internodal elongation lies between the corolla and the andrecium. So here we can see this is the corolla point where the corolla rises, and this is the andrecium. And when the internodal region is elongated between the corolla and the andrecium, we call it as Androgynophore. Example, Grevia. The next one is called Gynophore. The internodal elongation lies between the andrecium and gynecium. Then we call it as Gynophore. Example, Caparis. So here we can see the Gynophore. The next one is called Gynandrophore, otherwise called as Androgynophore, when there is a unified internodal elongation between the corolla and andrecium. So here is the andrecium, corolla and andrecium, there is extension, as well as andrecium and gynecium. So this is the gynecium and andrecium, there is extension, so it is called Gynandrophore or Androgynophore. It is present in Gynandropsis. Based on the ovary position, they are classified as superior ovary, inferior ovary and half inferior ovary. The position or the attachment of the ovary related to the other floral parts. It can be classified as superior, inferior or half inferior. So this is the superior ovary, in which the sepals, petals, andrecium are attached to the base of the ovary. By looking at the structure itself, we can understand when the sepal, petal and the andrecium, if they are arising at the base of the ovary, then it is called a superior ovary. So when they are attached at the top, at the apex region of the ovary, the sepal, petal and the andrecium, when they are attached to the apex of the ovary, we call it as inferior ovary. So when they are in the halfway of that ovary, in the middle of the ovary, when the sepal, petal and andrecium are attached to the half middle of the ovary, then it is said to be half inferior ovary. Now let us see what is hypogynous. It is a term used when the sepal, petal and stamen are attached to the base of the ovary, that is the superior ovary. Example, Malvaceae. So the term which is used for sepal, petal attached to the middle of the ovary, we call it as half inferior. We call in other term as epihypogynous ovary. Example, Fabaceae and Rosaceae family. In epigynous ovary, the sepal, petal and the stamen will be attached at the tip of the ovary or the inferior ovary. Example for this is cucumber, apple and astraceae. What do you mean by perigynous? Perigynous term is used for the ovary which is having hypanthium, which is attached at the base of the ovary. What is this hypanthium? It is nothing but a fleshy elevated cup-like structure of the thalamus, which often contains nectar in it. That is called as hypanthium. When this hypanthium is present at the base of the superior ovary, we call it as perigynous. If it is present at the apex of the inferior ovary, we call it as epiperigynous. What is meant by placentation? Placentation is nothing but the mode of distribution of the placenta inside the ovary. So this is the marginal placentation. So when the placenta lies along the margin of the unicarpellate ovary, then it is called as marginal placentation. Example, Fabaceae. So when the ovules arise from the surface of the septa, you can see this is the surface, this is the placental tissue. In cross section of the ovary, we can see the septum and this is the ovary wall. When the ovules, the white color dots are called ovules. When they arise from the surface of the septa, then we call it as superficial placentation. Example for this is Nymphaeaceae. Free central placentation. Here we can see the ovary wall which is totally away from the placenta. Placenta is attached to the base of the ovary at one point and it is freed all over, and the ovules are attached on the placental tissue. Then it is called as free central. The placental tissue lies as a column in the compound ovary without any septum. Then it is free central ovary. Example, Caryophyllaceae, Dianthus and Primrose. The next one is called as axial placentation, in which the placental tissue and the ovary wall will be divided by the septa. Placentae arise from the column in a compound ovary with septa. Then it is called as axial. Example, hibiscus, tomato, lemon. Then next one is called parietal. Here the ovules are attached on the ovary wall or upon the intruding partition of the unilocular compound ovary. Then it is called as parietal placentation. The last one is called as basal placentation, where the placenta lies at the base of the ovary. So from there the ovule will be attached. Then it is called as basal placentation. Example, sunflower, marigold, Asteraceae family. Next we shall learn how to construct the floral diagram and floral formula. So first, what is this floral diagram? So diagram that represent the cross section of the flower, how the parts are arranged, how the floral buds are arranged when it is viewed from above, how it looks, that is represented by the floral diagram, and it shows the number of the bracts, bracteoles, sepals, petals, and how they are fused, whether they are overlapping, and also the type of placentation in the flower. Everything will be shown by the floral diagram. And the branch which bears the flower is called as the mother axis, and the side of the flower which is facing the mother axis is called posterior side. The side which faces the mother axis is called as posterior side, and the opposite side to the posterior side is called as anterior side. That is, the side which faces the bract is called as anterior side. This is an example for the floral diagram, and this diagram shows the arrangement of the bracts. This is the bract and the bracteoles. This is the bract. These are the bracteoles. This concentric ring represent the calyx or the sepals. This concentric ring represent the petals or the corolla, and this represent the andrecium or the anther, and inside you have the cross section of the ovary. This represent the ovary. So it shows everything, the bract, number of bracteoles, floral parts, how they are fused, whether they are overlapping like this, and even the placentation of the ovule. Everything is shown by the floral diagram. The branch that bears the flower is called as mother axis, and the side of the flower that is facing the mother axis is called the posterior side, and the opposite side facing the bract, which will face the bract, is called as anterior side of the flower. The members of the different floral whorls are shown by the concentric rings like this. And how to write the floral formula? So here this BR will represent the bracteate. If the flower has the bract, then this BR. If it is absent, we have to write EBR. So if it is present, we have to write BR. So the BRL represent bracteoles. If it is absent, we have to write EBRL. Then this sign represent the symmetry of the flower, whether they are radially symmetry. This is when they are radially symmetry, we call it as actinomorphic. So this represent actinomorphic. When they are bilaterally symmetry, we call it as zygomorphic. So the percentage sign will represent the zygomorphic, and this sign will represent the bisexual flowers. And K for the calyx, the number of calyx which are present. If they are united by like this in valvate aestivation, we can write the number 5 within the brackets. And C represent the corolla, and corolla also will have the number of petals. 5 petals are there, so we can write 5. And if they are free, you should not write with the brackets. If they are united alone, you have to write with the brackets. Then A is for andrecium. So when the anthers, the stamens are many in number, we can write infinity. And when they are united, here in the hibiscus, they are united by the staminal tube, and so you have to write the infinity within the brackets. Then Gynecium is superior. It is with superior ovary, and they are pentalocular. Syncorpus, and so it is 5 number is written within the bracket syncorpus, which represent the syncorpus ovary. Once again I repeat, BR for bracteate, EBR for E bracteate, BRL for bracteolate, EBRL for E bracteolate. This sign represent the radial symmetry of the flower, actinomorphic. The percentage sign represent the zygomorphic, but that is bilaterally symmetry. So this represent the male organ is present, androecium is present, that is staminate flower, and the plus sign, this sign represent the pistillate flower, and if both are present then we put this sign bisexual flower, K for calyx, and if they are 5 in number, K5. Aposepalous means we should not write within the bracket. If they are synsepalous, we should write within the bracket. Corolla, C for corolla, C5 for apopetalous, and within the bracket if it is written synpetalous. If the corolla are bilabiate with the upper lip is having 2 lobes, we have to write bilabiate, that is 2 plus 3 within the bracket. Androecium, if they are 3 in number and free, we have to just write 3. If they are 4 in number and in 2 words didynamous, we have to write A 2 plus 2, and they are free, so no bracket should be written for it. Then if the androecium is in 2 bundles, that is diadelphous, 9 stamens unite to form 1 bundle and 1 stamen free another bundle, then we have to write 9 within bracket plus 1 separately. If the androecium is epipetalous, that is it is attached to the corolla, we have to join the A with the C by an arc like this. And if there is sterile stamen is present, if there is no stamen, then staminode flower A0. If the gynecium is absent, then G0, that is pistillode flower. If the gynecium or the pistil is having 2 corpus, 2, and they are free, apocorpus, no bracket. If they are syncorpus, we have to write within the bracket. And if the ovary is superior, we have to underline, we have to draw the line below the G, superior ovary. For inferior ovary, we not have to underline this G. If it is semi-inferior ovary, then we have to write an hyphen beside this G like this, then it is semi-inferior ovary. When the number of units are more than 5 or infinite number, then we have to use the symbol infinite. Let us learn some more floral diagram and floral formula. So Exnora coccinea. So here we can see the mother axis, the dot represent the mother axis, and this green color whorl is the sepals, which are 4 in number and they are united in valvate aestivation, and this blue color concentric circle represent the petals, which are also 4 in number and they are in twisted aestivation. They are joined together, that means they are synpetalous and in twisted aestivation. So they are joined together, and at the joining, at the junction of the 2 petals lies androecium. So androecium is attached to the petals and so it is epipetalous. So this represents the androecium, which is also 4 in number, and this represents the ovary, which is bicorpulary syncorpus ovary. Here the floral formula: BR, bract is present, bracteoles are absent, there is no bracteoles here. EBRL, that is represented by EBRL. Actinomorphic, that is radially symmetry, the flower is radially symmetry. Bisexual, it has both the androecium and gynecium. Calyx 4, which are united. Corolla 4, which is also united. Synsepalous and synpetalous, and androecium are joined with the corolla, and so we have to draw the arc. It is epipetalous, which are 4 in number and they are separate from each other. Gynecium is bicorpulary, syncorpus, superior ovary. Let us see the other examples of unisexual flowers. First one is Phyllanthus amaris, which is commonly called as Kidanilli. So here this is the male flower and this is the female flower. Mother axis is dot, represent the mother axis. Both the male and the female flower, they do not have the distinct petals and the sepals. They are having tepals which are of similar, but they are present in 2 whorls of valvate aestivation. Outer 3 free tepals and inner 3 free tepals. Similarly in female flower also, outer 3 free tepals and inner free 3 tepals. And the male plant has the 3 stamen which are united, which are joined together. This into in the middle represent gynecium is absent and it is a staminate flower, and the gynecium, it is having 3 locular syncorpus ovary, 3 corpels which are joined together, that it is having tricorpulary syncorpus ovary and ovules in the axial placentation. The next example is called Cocos nucifer, that is coconut. And here it is also having unisexual flowers like male and the female flower. This dot represents the mother axis. In Cocos nucifer also there is no distinct petals and sepals. They are called as tepals. Outer whorl which is in the imbricate aestivation and inner whorl is in the valvate aestivation. Similarly, the same thing is present in the female flower also. They do not possess the bracteoles, but they have the bracts. And in male flower we can see the distribution of the androgynium, the stamen, how they are distributed. 3 are in one whorl and another 3 are in the outer whorl, but they are free. And the ovary is absent in the male flower and stamens are absent in the female flower, and the ovary is tricarpellary syncorpus superior ovary. Next we shall learn about the fruits. Fruits are the product of pollination and fertilization of the flower. The fruit is a fertilized and ripened ovary. The branch of horticulture that deals with the study of fruits and their cultivation is called as pomology. What is the structure of the fruit? The fruit has a fruit wall and it is called as pericarp. And this pericarp is differentiated into outer epicarp, middle mesocarp and inner endocarp. The inner part of the fruit is occupied by the seeds. Based on the formation, the fruits can be classified into true fruit, false fruit and parthenocorpic fruit. When the ovary alone develops into fruit without any non-carpellary part, then it is called as true fruit. When the ovary develops into the fruit, it is true fruit. Example, tomato and mango. In addition to the ovary, when the non-carpellary floral parts like thalamus, in the apple the thalamus becomes the fruit, perianth, in the jackfruit the perianth becomes the fruit, involucre and perianth, in walnut involucre and perianth develop into the fruit. Like this, any non-carpellary floral parts other than the ovary, in addition to the ovary, becomes a fruit. It is called as false fruit. The third one is called Parthenocorpic fruit. It is the development of the fruit without fertilization. So without fertilization, if the ovary develops into the fruit, it will not possess the seeds. Example for this is banana. Based on the structure, the fruits are classified into 3 types, namely the simple fruit, aggregate fruit and the multiple fruit. Simple fruit, if the fruit is derived from a single ovary of a flower, it is called a simple fruit. Example for this is tomato, mango, etc. Based on the nature of the pericarp, it is again divided into the fleshy fruit and the dry fruit. In fleshy fruits, the fruits are derived from a single pistil where the pericarp is fleshy and succulent, and it is differentiated into epicarp, mesocarp and endocarp as we have already seen. This is again divided into berry, droop, pepo, hesperidium, pome and balusta. What is berry? Berry fruit develops from the bicarpellary or multicarpellary syncorpus ovary. Here the epicarp will be very thin. So you would have seen in tomato, the skin of the tomato is the epicarp. Then the mesocarp and endocarp will be together, they will remain undifferentiated and they form the pulp of the fruit. And in this, the seeds will be embedded in the pulp. Example for this is tomato, grapes, brinjal, etc. The second type is called as droop. Here, the fruit will develop from the monocarpellary superior ovary. It is usually one-seeded. You would have seen the seed of the mango. The pericarp will be differentiated into outer skinny epicarp and the fleshy and the pulpy mesocarp, and endocarp will be stony. It is hard and stony. That's why it is called as the mango is otherwise called as stone fruit. Example for this droop is mango and coconut. The third one is pepo. The fruit here develops from the tricarpellary inferior ovary. Here the pericarp will turn into leathery woody structure and this will enclose the fleshy mesocarp, which is very soft and smooth. Example for this is cucumber, watermelon, bottle gourd, pumpkin, etc. The fourth type is called as Hesperidium. Here the fruit will develop from the multicarpellary, multilocular syncorpus superior ovary. I hope you all know what is multilocular syncorpus superior ovary. The fruit wall here is differentiated into leathery epicarp. So what we peel off from the orange with the oil glands, which is the epicarp, and the middle fibrous mesocarp, that is the skin like structure which we take out from the orange fruit, that is mesocarp, and the endocarp form distinct chambers, and this contains the juicy hair. Example, orange and lemon. Next type is called as pome. Pome, it will develop from the multicarpellary syncorpus inferior ovary. In pome, the receptacle also will develop along with the ovary and it becomes fleshy, and so receptacle will enclose the true fruit. In pome, the epicarp is the thin skin like, and endocarp is cartilaginous, and that will be covered by the receptacle, that is fleshy. The edible part of the pome is the receptacle. Example for this is pear and apple, which is the false fruit. Balusta. Balusta, example, pomegranate. Here the fleshy indehiscent fruit will develop from the multicarpellary, multilocular inferior ovary, and here the pericarp is tough and leathery, which we peel off and throw, and the seeds are attached irregularly to the testa, and this bears the edible portion. Example, pomegranate. Next we have the dry fruits. The dry fruits are again classified into three types, namely dry dehiscent, dry indehiscent, and schizocarpic. In dry dehiscence, the pericarp of this fruit will be dry and they can split open along the sutures to liberate the seeds, and they are classified into follicle, legume, silicua, silicula, and capsule. And this capsule is again classified into septicidal capsule, loculicidal capsule, and poricidal capsule. First, follicle. Here the fruit will develop from the monocarpellary superior ovary. This is the example for follicle calotropis. It will divide in one suture to liberate the seeds. In legume, it divides on both the dorsal and the ventral sutures to liberate the seeds. Example, pisum. The third one is silicua. Silicua, example, brassica. The fruit will develop from the bicarpellary syncorpus superior ovary, and this is initially will have only one chamber, and it will become two chamber due to the formation of the false septum, which is called as replum. And the fruit will dehisce along two sutures. Example, brassica. The fourth one is the silicula. Example, capsella. The fruit will be similar to silicua, but it will be shorter and broader, and they also divide with the help of the false septum in two sutures, along the two sutures. Next type is called as capsule. The capsule is again divided into septicidal, loculicidal, and poricidal. The first one is the loculicidal capsule. Example, Abelmoscus esculentum, that is lady's finger. The capsule will split along the locule and the valves will be remain attached to the septum. So the capsule will be dividing along the locules. You can see the splitting, and the valves will be attached to the septum. The second type is called as septicidal or septifragal. In this, the capsule will split along the septum and the valves will be remaining attached to the septum. Example for this is Datura and Aristolochia. The third one is called as poricidal. Poricidal, in this the dehiscence take place through the terminal pores. Example, papaver. Next type of dry fruit is dry indehiscent. Indehiscent means they will not split open at maturity, and it is again classified into achene, Cypsela, Caryopsis, nut, samara, and atricle. Dry indehiscent. The first one is called as Achene. Achenial, it means indecent, they cannot split open. So in achene, it is a single seeded dry fruit. It develops from the single carpal superior ovary, and achene develops from the apocarpus pistil, where the carpals will be free and the fruit wall is free from the seed coat. The seed will be inside the fruit wall and it is free. Example, clematis. The second type is called as Sepsilla, example Tridax. This is a single seeded dry fruit which develops from the bicarpillary syncarpus inferior ovary with reduced scales and hairy or feathery calyx lobe. Example, Tridax. The next type is called Caryopsis, example rice. It is a one-seeded fruit which develops from the monocarpillary superior ovary. The pericarp is inseparable, it cannot be separated, it is fused with the seed, and that is what is called as husk. We say husk or tavidu in Tamil. And then the next type is called nut or anacardium, cashew nut. It develops from the multicarpillary syncarpus superior ovary with the hard woody pericarp, hard woody bony pericarp. In this, the edible fleshy fruit is the pedicel of the flower. The next type is called as Samara, example Acer. So here a dry indehiscent one-seeded fruit in which the pericarp will develop into thin winged structure around the fruit, example Acer. The last type is called Atrical, example Chenopodium. It develops from the bicarpillary unilocular syncarpus superior ovary. Here the pericarp will loosely enclose the seeds. On drying, it will liberate all the seeds. Example, Chenopodium. The third type of dry fruit is Isocopic fruit. And this type is intermediate between the dehiscent and indehiscent fruit. This fruit, instead of dehiscing completely, it will split into a number of segments, and each segment may contain one or more seeds, and they are of the following types. The first type of the Isocopic fruit is cremocarp. The fruit will develop from the bicarpillary syncarpus inferior ovary, and the fruit will divide into two one-seeded segments known as mericarp. This example you would have seen, coriander. The second type of the Isocopic fruit is Carcerolus. The fruit here will develop from the bicarpillary syncarpus superior ovary, and here the fruit will develop into four one-seeded segments. And these one-seeded segments are called as nutlets. Example, Leucos. The third Isocopic fruit is called Lamentum. Example, Mimosa. Here the fruit will be derived from the monocarpillary unilocular ovary. Here the leguminous fruit will be constricted between the seeds and forms a number of one seed compartment. Like this it will divide 1, 2, like that it will be dividing into many compartments at the maturity. Example, Mimosa. The last type is called Regma. Here it develops from the tricarpillary syncarpus superior trilocular ovary. It will split into one seeded cocci, and which will be remain attached to the carpophore. Example, Ricinus, Amanakku, that is castor oil seeds. The second type of the fruit is called as aggregate fruit. Aggregate fruit will develop from a single flower but with apocarpus ovary, where the carpels are distinct and free, and each free carpel may develop into a simple fruitlet, and the collection of the simple fruitlets makes the aggregate fruit. Here each ovary may develop into a drupe, an achene, or a follicle. Etario is the term given for the aggregate fruit, that is fruit borne by a single flower, that is etario of follicle, example Calotropis, etario of achena, example Clematis, etario of drupe, raspberry, etario of berries, that is Polyalthea and Annona. So Annona is the custard apple and Polyalthea is the Ashoka tree. Then last type of fruit is called as multiple fruit. Multiple fruit is again classified into Psorosis, jackfruit and Syconus. Example, ficus, that is nothing but the Athipalam. Now first one, Psorosis. In Psorosis, fleshy multiple fruit will develop from a spike or spadic inflorescence. All the flowers will be fused by that succulent perianth, and at the same time the axis which bears them become fleshy and juicy. The whole inflorescence will become a compact mass of fruit. Example, jackfruit and pineapple also. Here the edible portion is the perianth. Succulent perianth is the edible portion in this jackfruit. In ficus, the multiple fruit will develop from the hypanthodium inflorescence. The receptacle will be converted into the fleshy fruit, and this will enclose a number of true fruit or achenes that will develop from the female flower of the hypanthodium inflorescence. Example, ficus or the adhipadam. Here we have a table in your reader that contains edible parts of the fruit. So type of fruit, berry, tomato, brinjal, guava, and their botanical name is given and which part is edible. In mango, the edible part is the mesocarp. In coconut, endosperm of both cellular and liquid type are edible. In date, pericarp is edible. Pepo, cucumber, whole fruit is edible. In Hesperidium, the edible part is the juicy hairs on the endocarp. And in pome, that is apple, the thalamus, that is the false fruit, becomes the edible part, and sometimes part of pericarp also become edible part. In balusta, pomegranate, succulent testa of the seeds becomes the edible portion. In legume, the seeds will be edible. Silicua mustard seeds are edible. Poricidal capsule, poppy seeds are edible. Loculicidal capsule, that is lady's finger, the tender fruit of the plant is edible. Sepsilla, the seed which is used for oil, that is example sunflower, Elianthus anus. Caryopsis, the example maize and paddy, seeds become the edible part. Nut, cashew nut. Pedicel or the false fruit, actually pedicel becomes the fruit, the colored part, either it is orange or red in color, that is the pedicel. And the cotyledon, that is a true fruit, cashew nut. Cremocarp, coriandrum, pericarp. Lamentum, touch me not plant, seed becomes edible. Aggregate fruit, Ananas, squamosa, pericarp is edible. Composite fruit, Psorosis and Syconus, jackfruit. Psorosis example, jackfruit, pineapple, mulberry. So all perianth and seeds are edible. Here in mulberry, the whole fruit is edible. Fig, Syconus fig, whole inflorescence become edible. Functions of the fruit. Fruits becomes the source of food for animals and human beings. The edible part of the fruit is the source of food, and they contain important chemicals like sugar, pectin, organic acid, vitamins and minerals. And the fruit protects the seeds from the unfavorable conditions. Both fleshy and the dry fruits help in the dispersal of the seeds. So fruits will help the seeds to get dispersed, both in the fleshy fruit as well as in the case of dry fruit. Fleshy fruit, the human beings or animals will consume the fruit and disperse the seeds to distant places. In certain cases, these fruits may provide the nourishment or the nutrition for the developing seedling which is present inside the seeds. And fruits will provide medicine for human beings. It becomes the source of medicine for human beings. A fertilized mature ovule becomes a seed. Do all fruits contain seeds? Triploid fruits do not have seeds. What do you mean by triploid? The plant which has the 3n number of chromosomes in their cells, they are triploid. They are seedless. A seed is a mature ovule which contains the embryo in it. So after fertilization, the ovule undergoes various changes and it gets transformed into a seed. There are two types of seeds based on the number of cotyledons. If the seeds have two cotyledons, they are called as dicotyledonous seeds. If the seeds have single cotyledon, they are called as monocotyledonous seeds. Based on the presence and the absence of the endosperm, the seeds are of two types. If they possess the endosperm, they are called as albuminous seeds or endospermous seeds. This endosperm will persist in the seed and it will nourish the seedling during the early development of the embryo. Example for this is castor, sunflower and maize. In these plants, the cotyledons will be very thin and membranous. Whereas in the ex-albuminous or non-endospermous seeds, the food is utilized by the developing embryo. At its mature stage, they will be without endosperm. Here, the seeds cotyledons will store the food, and these cotyledons will become thick and fleshy. Example, pea seeds and the groundnut seeds. Now let us see the significance of seeds. The seeds will enclose the embryo and it will protect the embryo for the next generation. The seeds will contain the food for the developing embryo also. And seeds becomes the means of dispersal for the new individuals. So by means of seeds, the plants are getting dispersed from one place to another. And seeds becomes a means for the perpetuation of the species. The embryo will remain dormant inside the seed under the unfavorable condition, and it will germinate once they receive the suitable conditions. And the seeds of the various plants will store the food for both animal and men. And seeds becomes the basis of agriculture. With the seeds only, agriculture can happen. Raising of the food crops can be done with the help of the seeds. The seeds are the products of the sexual reproduction, and so they provide the genetic variation as well as recombination in the plants. New varieties of plants are produced with the help of the sexual reproduction by means of the seeds.